You won't believe what this stranger did when he saw a crying woman on the train. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Emma stepped onto the last train of the night, her steps slow, shoulders hunched beneath a thin coat. The platform was nearly deserted, the sound of distant rain blending with the hum of the waiting train. She lowered herself into a window seat, staring out as the city lights shimmered, distorted by raindrops clinging to the glass. Her phone vibrated in her lap, another update from the hospital. She couldn't bring herself to look. She already knew what it would say. The words of the doctors still echoed in her mind. "We've done all we can." A tear welled in her eye, trailing down her cheek as she bit her lip, fighting to hold the rest back. Her fingers tightened around her phone, knuckles pale. Everything felt fragile, her hope, her world, her strength. Across the aisle, a man sat alone. Impeccably dressed in a dark tailored suit, he held a leather briefcase on his lap, his gaze fixed quietly on Emma. His face was unreadable, but his eyes followed her every subtle movement. For a long moment, neither spoke. The train doors closed with a hiss, and the carriage jolted forward. Empty seats surrounded them, save for a sleeping elderly man at the far end. The overhead lights flickered, casting long shadows along the polished floor. Emma shifted uncomfortably, sensing the man's attention. She stole a glance at him. He didn't look away. There was no malice in his gaze, no overt curiosity, only a strange, steady calm, as if he was waiting for something. She turned back to the window, wiping another tear with the sleeve of her coat. Her reflection stared back at her, hollow-eyed, tired. Outside, the city passed in streaks of gold and silver, neon signs blurred into watercolor. The rain fell harder, tapping rhythmically against the glass, drowning out the distant chatter of passengers in the next car. Minutes passed in silence. Then, the man stood. His movements were deliberate, unhurried. He crossed the aisle and stopped beside her, his shadow falling over her seat. Emma looked up, startled. In his hand, he held a folded white handkerchief. Embroidered initials marked the corner, CW. He extended it gently. "You look like you could use this," he said, his voice low, measured. Emma hesitated, then took it, her fingers brushing his for the briefest moment. "Thank you," she murmured, unsure whether to be grateful or wary. He sat down across from her, setting his briefcase at his feet. Silence stretched between them again, thick with unspoken words. The hum of the train filled the space. "You've had a long day," he said quietly, not as a question, but an observation. Emma sighed, her shoulders sinking deeper. "You could say that." He didn't press. He simply waited, gaze steady, patient. And somehow, that quiet waiting unraveled her defenses more than any direct question could. "My mother's in the hospital," she said softly, almost to herself. They can't do anything else. I don't know what I'm going to do." Her words hung in the air, fragile, raw. The man nodded slowly, as if he'd known before she spoke. His hands clasped in his lap, his posture composed. But there was something beneath the surface, a flicker in his eyes, a shadow of deeper understanding. "What's her condition?" he asked, his tone careful, professional. Emma frowned faintly at the shift in his voice. "It's rare. Her organs are failing. They said no treatments have worked. We're out of options." In the bills, her voice broke off. "It's too much." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze sharpening. "They gave up?" She swallowed hard. "Yes. They told me to start preparing. To say goodbye." The train rattled over a bridge, steel beams flashing by the windows. The lights flickered again. Emma watched his face, trying to read him, but his expression remained calm, thoughtful. "I'm sorry," he said at last. No one should have to hear those words. Emma blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. For a stranger, he sounded as though he carried the weight of those words himself. He reached into his coat pocket, drawing out a sleek black business card, pressing it between his fingers. The gold letters shimmered faintly under the flickering light. "My name is Dr. Carter Weston," he said quietly, handing it to her. Emma froze. She glanced down at the card, her breath catching. The name was familiar. Weston Medical. She'd heard of it. Everyone had. One of the biggest biotech firms in the world. Billionaire founder. Cutting-edge research. She looked back up at him, disbelief flooding her face. "You're him." He gave a small nod. "I travel anonymously." Keeps the noise away. He leaned back in his seat, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've been looking for someone like you." Emma's pulse quickened. "Someone? Like me?" "A case. A real person. Someone who needs what no hospital can offer." His words were deliberate, heavy. I'm developing something experimental. Risky, but promising. It hasn't been approved. It hasn't been tested on a case like this. But it might be her only chance. The train slowed as it approached the next station, brakes squealing softly. Emma stared at him, the world outside suddenly distant, unreal. Why me? She whispered. Dr. Weston's lips curved into a faint smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Because tonight, I chose this train. And you chose this seat. And maybe that's fate. Or maybe, he paused, watching her carefully. Maybe it's the last miracle your mother has left. The doors slid open. Cold air drifted in. He stood, holding out his hand. Come with me, he said softly. Time's running out. Emma looked down at the handkerchief in her lap, at the initials stitched into the corner. She looked at the man standing before her, mysterious, powerful, yet somehow familiar. And in that moment, as the rain poured harder, as the lights shimmered across wet pavement, she stood up. She took his hand, and together, they stepped off the train into the unknown. Emma's gaze drifted to the window again, her reflection faint beneath the city's moving lights. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed the folded handkerchief against the corner of her eye. It was soft, expensive, nothing like the tissues she usually carried. Her mind barely registered the initials stitched in the fabric. The man had returned to his seat across from her, his posture relaxed yet poised, like someone used to waiting for answers. He watched her, not intrusively, but attentively, as if reading between the lines of her silence. For a moment, Emma tried to pretend he wasn't there. But his presence lingered, an invisible weight across the aisle. Eventually, she lowered the handkerchief to her lap, stealing another glance at him. Why are you watching me? She asked softly, her voice worn but direct. He didn't flinch at the question. Instead, a faint smile touched his lips, subtle and unreadable. You looked like someone who needed help, he replied calmly. That's all. Emma frowned faintly. People don't usually notice. Or they pretend not to. I'm not most people. His answer was simple, almost matter-of-fact. He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. Rough night. She hesitated, debating whether to answer. Yet something in his tone, steady, quiet, disarmed her defenses. More like a rough year, she admitted. He nodded slowly, as though confirming something unspoken. Do you want to talk about it? Emma's gaze dropped to her hands, fingers twisting the embroidered corner of the handkerchief. Not really, she murmured, though her voice wavered. But I don't think I can keep it in either. He waited, not pushing, not coaxing, just offering a space. And maybe that's why the words finally came. My mom's dying. Her throat tightened, but she kept going. She's been sick for a long time. We tried everything. Every doctor, every treatment, every loan. But it's never enough. Tonight, they told me. Her breath hitched. They told me it's time to let go. A silence settled between them, deeper than before. The train rattled softly beneath their feet, lights flickering overhead as they passed under an overpass. I'm sorry, the man said after a moment. His voice carried no pity, only quiet sincerity. Emma glanced up, startled by the weight of those two words. She'd heard apologies from nurses, from doctors, from friends who didn't know what else to say. But his felt different, rooted, genuine. She wiped at her eyes again. Yeah, me too. The man leaned back, his gaze never wavering. What's her condition? Emma hesitated. Her kidneys failed first, then her liver. They don't know why. It's something rare, genetic maybe. Nothing's worked. Every treatment just slowed it down. Until it didn't. She swallowed. Now they're just keeping her comfortable. He listened without interrupting, his brow faintly furrowed in thought. No clinical trials? No experimental therapies? Emma shook her head. We tried to get her into one, but they said she didn't qualify. Too late. Too complicated. The man's lips pressed into a thin line, his expression momentarily darkening. They gave up. It's not their fault, Emma said softly. They did everything they could. Did they? He murmured, almost to himself. Emma frowned, unsettled by the quiet conviction in his voice. You sound like you don't believe them. He lifted his gaze to hers again. I believe in data, but I don't always believe in decisions. For a moment, neither spoke. The train slowed as it approached a station, the glow of the platform spilling briefly into the car before the doors slid shut again, leaving them cocooned in dim light and motion. Emma watched him carefully. Are you a doctor? He smiled faintly. Of sorts. She narrowed her eyes. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't empty. It thrummed with quiet tension, like a held breath. You're very calm for a stranger on a train, Emma observed, folding the handkerchief carefully. He chuckled softly. I've had a lot of practice. Practice? Doing what? His gaze met hers again, sharper now, though still gentle. Listening. Watching. Finding people who've been failed by the system. Emma's brow furrowed. Why? The train swayed as it rounded a curve, lights outside flaring and fading. He tapped his fingers lightly against the armrest. Because sometimes, the solution isn't in a hospital. Sometimes it's outside the rules. A chill traced down her spine. That sounds dangerous. Not for you, he said softly. For the people who want things to stay broken. Emma stared at him, unsure whether to feel hope or fear. Who are you really? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat, retrieving a sleek black card. Gold letters glimmered under the dim light as he handed it to her. She took it hesitantly, reading aloud, Carter Weston. Weston Medical. Her breath caught. You're Dr. Carter Weston? He nodded once. In the flesh. Emma's pulse quickened. She'd read about him, articles, interviews, headlines. A billionaire doctor, pioneer of experimental treatments, whispered rumors of cures too radical for mainstream approval. You're not supposed to be here, she said, almost disbelieving. Neither are you, he replied quietly. But here we are. She clutched the card, confusion and wonder swirling inside her. Why talk to me? He leaned forward, his gaze steady, intense. Because I've been looking for a case like your mother's. Someone the world gave up on. Someone they left behind. Emma's voice trembled. Why her? Because I can't stand watching people die when there's still a chance, he said simply. Even if it's 1 in a million. The train began slowing again, the next station drawing closer. He stood, extending his hand. I can't promise a cure. But I can promise I won't stop trying. Emma stared at his outstretched hand, heart pounding. Outside, the doors were about to open, the platform lights beckoning. You've got 5 seconds, he said softly. Stay, or come with me. Emma's breath hitched. 5 seconds. A choice between the familiar ache of despair or a leap into the unknown. The doors slid open. She rose. She took his hand. And as they stepped onto the platform, into the cold night, Emma felt, for the first time in months, the fragile flicker of hope begin to burn. Emma sat across from him in the quiet cafe near the station, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea that had long since gone cold. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, tracing lazy paths down the window. Inside, the hum of conversation faded into the background, muffled beneath the weight of everything she hadn't said until now. Across the small table, Carter Weston watched her steadily, his elbows resting lightly on the wood, fingers interlaced. He hadn't touched his coffee, hadn't looked away once since they sat down. Emma stared into the swirling remnants of her tea. I don't even know why I'm telling you this, she murmured, her voice raw. I haven't told anyone. Not like this. You needed to say it, Carter replied quietly. A bitter smile flickered across her lips. I've been saying it for months. To doctors, nurses, insurance reps, anyone who would listen. And no one could do anything. Her fingers tightened around the mug. I thought maybe if I kept telling it, someone would finally care enough to fix it. He said nothing. Just waited. Emma inhaled shakily. She was fine a year ago. Strong. Worked double shifts just to keep us afloat. Then she started getting tired. Couldn't keep food down. Bruises that wouldn't heal. Her throat closed for a moment. By the time they figured it out, it was already everywhere. She blinked hard, forcing back the tears pressing behind her eyes. Kidneys first. Then her liver. Now her heart's failing. They say it's some rare autoimmune thing. They tried steroids, plasmapheresis, immunosuppressants. Nothing worked. Carter's brow furrowed slightly, though he remained silent. His gaze never wavered. I sold the car. Maxed the credit cards. Took out loans I can't pay back. Crowdfunding barely scratched the surface. Her voice broke, the words tumbling faster. We even tried experimental clinics overseas. Scams, probably. But I had to try. Her breath came out uneven. Tonight, they told me there's nothing left. No more treatments. They're moving her to hospice. Her hand trembled as she set down the mug. They told me to start making arrangements. A heavy silence hung between them, broken only by the faint clink of silverware from a distant table. I don't know how to do that, she whispered. How do you arrange to say goodbye? Carter's jaw tightened, a flicker of something grief? Anger, shadowing his expression. For a long moment, he said nothing, his eyes fixed on her face as if memorizing every detail. You shouldn't have to, he said finally, his voice low. Not like this. Emma looked up sharply. What do you mean? He leaned back slightly, fingers drumming once against the table. Medicine's full of rules, protocols, timelines. Sometimes those rules save lives, but sometimes they bury people before they're even dead. Her brow creased. You're saying they gave up too soon. I'm saying they stopped looking. His gaze darkened, his voice tightening with quiet conviction. I don't stop. Emma searched his face, uncertain whether to feel hope or suspicion. Why do you care? She asked quietly. You don't even know me. Carter's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked past her for a moment, as if seeing something far beyond the rain-streaked glass. Because once, he said slowly, I was the one sitting where you are. And no one came for me. The confession hung between them like a fragile thread. Emma's chest ached with questions she didn't know how to ask. What happened? She ventured softly. His gaze returned to hers, steady but haunted. Someone I loved. Same story. Different diagnosis. They told me to let go. But I couldn't. Wouldn't. A flicker of bitterness passed through his voice. I found a way. But too late. Emma's throat tightened. I'm sorry. He nodded once, accepting the words but brushing them aside. That's why I built Weston Medical. To make sure too late doesn't happen again. A beat of silence. Then his voice gentled. Your mother's case. I've seen something like it. Not exactly, but close enough. There's a trial. Private. Off record. We're not waiting for approval. We're testing live. I wasn't sure if I'd offer it to anyone yet. Emma's pulse quickened. Why me? He studied her for a long moment, then gave a small, quiet smile. Because you didn't stop either. The rain outside thickened again, drumming against the window like a heartbeat. You're saying you have something that could help her? She asked, hardly daring to believe it. I'm saying there's a chance, Carter said carefully. It's not a guarantee. It's risky. But if she's already at the end, he let the words trail off, letting the unspoken truth fill the space. Emma's hands gripped the table edge. What kind of risk? Organ rejection. Hemorrhage. Multi-system failure. But without it, he shook his head. You already know. She exhaled shakily. Why isn't this in hospitals? Because it's too new. Too untested. Too dangerous for committees and review boards. They'd rather let people die than break the rules. Emma swallowed hard. But you'll break them. His smile was brief, tired. I've already broken them. A hush settled over the table again. Emma stared at her hands, mind spinning. The hopelessness that had consumed her hours ago felt distant now, replaced by something equally terrifying, a fragile sliver of possibility. You'd really do this for a stranger? She asked quietly. You're not a stranger anymore, Carter replied. Not tonight. She looked up, meeting his gaze head-on. Then tell me what I have to do. Outside, the streetlights flickered against the rain-soaked pavement as Carter leaned forward, his voice low but certain. Come with me, he said. We start now. And in that moment, beneath the weight of her confession and his quiet resolve, Emma felt the tide shift. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't sinking alone. Emma sat frozen, the small black card trembling between her fingers. The gold lettering shimmered faintly under the cafe's dim light. Dr. Carter Weston, she read aloud again, barely believing the words. She looked up at him, her breath shallow. This is you. Carter gave a faint nod, his expression unreadable. It is. Emma's mind scrambled to catch up. She'd seen his name before, in headlines she'd scrolled past late at night. Medical maverick. Billionaire scientist. Rule breaker. But none of those stories had prepared her for the quiet man sitting across from her now. You're the founder of Weston Medical, she whispered. Yes. His tone was calm, deliberate. Why her voice cracked? Why are you here? On a train? In a cheap cafe? He leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. I've spent too long behind glass walls, Emma. Boardrooms. Labs. Conferences filled with people who talk about patients like their case numbers. A flicker of something hard flashed in his eyes. I needed to see what's really happening. Not filtered through charts or reports. But out here. Emma swallowed, struggling to process. You've been traveling? Anonymously? Yes. He folded his hands. No press. No entourage. Just watching, listening. She stared at him. Watching for what? For stories like yours. His voice softened. For people the system left behind. Emma shook her head slowly. That's not something billionaires do. A small, tired smile tugged at his lips. It's not. But I stopped being like them a long time ago. Her heart pounded. So what now? Carter's gaze deepened. I have a treatment. Experimental. Still in trial phase. Not FDA approved. Not sanctioned anywhere, frankly. He paused. It's risky. Dangerous, even. But it might work. Emma's stomach twisted. Might. It's a long shot. He didn't sugarcoat it. But it's a shot. She pressed her palms flat against the table, grounding herself. Why haven't you offered it to someone else? I've been waiting for the right candidate. Someone whose physiology, whose case, might actually align with the prototype. His expression darkened. Most of the world's already too broken for it. But your mother, she's close enough to the edge for it to matter, and not beyond hope. Emma's lips parted. You've been waiting for someone dying? I've been waiting for someone who still has a reason to fight, he corrected gently. A heavy silence settled between them. The hum of the cafe dimmed beneath the gravity of his words. Emma stared down at the card again. Why tell me now? Because if we don't start soon, we won't have anything to save. Her pulse thudded louder in her ears. And you're sure this is real? This isn't, she hesitated, hating the question but needing to ask. This isn't some cruel joke? His gaze didn't waver. You think a joke about life and death? She searched his face. Serious. Steady. Tired, maybe. But sincere. I've had every scammer and fake miracle worker approach me this past year, she admitted hoarsely. I want to believe you. You don't have to believe me yet, he interrupted gently. Just believe that you're not out of options. Emma's throat tightened. What happens if we do this? We fly tonight. My team's already prepping the lab. We'll need full genomic workups, immunomapping, aggressive pre-treatment. We'd have to stabilize her enough to handle the intervention. The words came so quickly, so clinically, she could barely follow. And if it fails? He didn't flinch. Then we were already out of time. She stared at him, heart sinking and rising at once. And if it works? His smile returned, faint but real. Then you get tomorrow. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. You have questions, Carter said quietly. Ask them. She opened her eyes. Why me? Really? I told you. I'm looking for cases where the world stopped trying. And I'm tired of letting them win. She bit her lip. What's in this for you? He leaned back, exhaling slowly. Peace. It wasn't the answer she expected. I've spent years building things no one's allowed to use. Saving lives I'm not allowed to touch. Watching red tape choke possibility. His voice lowered. I don't want another obituary on my conscience. Emma felt a strange ache in her chest. So this is personal. Everything worth doing is. Another long pause. Emma set the card gently on the table. If I say yes, there's no turning back, is there? No. She looked at him. And if I say no? Carter's eyes softened. Then I'll sit here with you until you're ready to go home. And I won't blame you. Her throat burned. You don't even know me. I know enough. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle again, mist curling beneath the street lamps. Emma drew a shaky breath. If I trust you, I need you to promise me something. Carter straightened. Anything. She swallowed hard. Don't give me false hope. He met her gaze, steady and solemn. I won't. But I'll give you every real chance I've got. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Emma pushed back her chair, rising on unsteady feet. Let's go, she said quietly. Carter stood beside her, his expression resolute. We'll need to hurry. And as they stepped into the night, side by side beneath the rain-slicked streets, Emma felt the fragile thread of hope pull tighter. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't over yet. They stood beneath the flickering platform lights, the last train groaning in the distance as it pulled away, leaving the station eerily quiet. Rain clung to the night air, cold and insistent. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, still trembling, not from the chill, but from everything that had unraveled in the last hour. Dr. Carter Weston slipped his phone back into his pocket, turning to face her with a look both measured and heavy. I've arranged the jet. We can be in New York by sunrise. Emma swallowed hard, her pulse thudding beneath her skin. Just like that? No, he said, quietly but firmly. Not just like that. She frowned. What do you mean? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. There's something I need from you, Emma. One condition. Her chest tightened. What kind of condition? No one can know. His eyes locked onto hers. About tonight. About me. About what we're doing. Emma's brows drew together. You want me to keep it a secret? Yes. The single word held an unmistakable finality. This treatment isn't public. Not cleared, not disclosed. If word gets out, it's over before it begins. She stared at him, confusion twisting inside her. But you're a billionaire. A doctor. Don't you have lawyers, teams, protections? He cut her off gently. Not from this. There are forces who don't want it released. Emma's stomach turned uneasily. Why? If it saves lives? Because saving lives isn't profitable. His mouth tightened into a grim line. Not the way this treatment would. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant echo of footsteps somewhere deeper in the station. Emma shivered. You're saying people would stop you from curing my mother? I'm saying they already have. She shook her head, trying to make sense of it. Then why risk it now? Because I'm tired of waiting for permission to do what's right. The weight of his words settled heavy in her chest. You want me to lie? I want you to protect this chance, he corrected gently. Once we start, we can't afford interference. No calls, no leaks, no reporters. If anyone finds out, they'll shut us down. I'm trusting you with that. Emma's heart pounded harder. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Why me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Why trust me? Because you've got nothing left to lose, Carter replied, his gaze unwavering. And because I've watched you fight harder than most people ever do. She pressed her lips together, the ache in her chest spreading. What if I can't keep it quiet? Then this never happens. His tone softened, but the warning remained. And your mother won't get the chance. Emma's breath hitched. The weight of the choice pressed down like iron. Secrecy. Silence. Trusting a man she'd met only hours ago with everything she had left. A flicker of doubt rippled through her. Is this even real? She asked quietly. Or am I just desperate enough to believe it? Carter's jaw tightened. That's something only time will prove. She stared at him, searching for cracks, lies, any sign of manipulation. But all she saw was exhaustion. And an unshakable resolve. Behind them, another pair of footsteps echoed faintly closer this time. Carter's gaze flicked over her shoulder, subtle but sharp. Let's move, he murmured. We're being watched. Emma spun instinctively, catching only a flash of a figure disappearing behind a pillar. Her stomach dropped. Who? Later. Carter took her arm, firm but not forceful. Come with me. They hurried up the platform stairs, shadows stretching long across the tiles. Somewhere behind, the footsteps followed, quiet, deliberate. Emma's pulse thundered. Who's following us? Someone who doesn't want you on that plane, Carter said grimly. They emerged onto the rain-slicked street, a black car idling at the curb. Carter opened the door swiftly, ushering her inside before sliding in after her. The driver pulled away without a word. Emma pressed her hands against her lap, heart racing, her mind spinning with questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. Do you do this often? She asked shakily. Rescue strangers in the middle of the night? Not strangers, Carter said softly. People who matter. She turned to him, her doubt clawing its way back. But why does this matter to you? He looked out the window, his reflection fractured by passing streetlights. Because every day I stay silent, someone else dies. Emma bit her lip, a stinging. And if I go with you, what happens to me? You become part of something bigger, he said. And maybe you save her. A silence settled again, deeper now, threaded with an unspoken pact. Outside, the city blurred past, lights shimmering through raindrops. Emma closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, her resolve had hardened. I'll keep your secret, she whispered. Carter turned, meeting her gaze. Then we've already won half the battle. But deep inside, as the car carried them away from the station, Emma couldn't shake the feeling. Some battles weren't meant to be won quietly. And somewhere out there, in the shadows following them, someone else was already moving to make sure this cure never reached the world. The sleek black car tore down the rain-slicked highway, headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, Emma sat rigid, fingers clenched tight in her lap. Her mind raced faster than the car, replaying Carter's words over and over. We're being watched. Beside her, Carter Weston tapped urgently at his phone, his jaw set, his face lit by the cold glow of the screen. We're 20 minutes out, he muttered to someone on the other end. Prep the chamber. Full clearance. I want containment protocols active. The call ended. Silence filled the cabin, except for the steady drum of rain against the windows. Emma turned to him, her throat dry. Where are we going? My lab. His gaze stayed locked ahead, where no one should be able to reach us. But something in his voice made her uneasy. The car wound through a private gate, past a high-security checkpoint. Beyond, a sprawling compound emerged, steel and glass under floodlights, sterile and imposing. The car screeched to a stop outside a discreet entrance. Carter leapt out first, holding the door open for Emma. Come on, he urged. We're running out of time. Inside, the air shifted cool, sterile, humming faintly with machines. Scientists in white coats glanced up as they passed, some nodding in recognition, others frowning in concern. Emma struggled to keep up as Carter led her down stark corridors, past labs filled with equipment she didn't understand. "Is my mother already here?" she asked, breathless. "She's being transferred now. By air. She'll be here in less than an hour." Emma's chest tightened. Will she make it? Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he pushed through a set of reinforced doors into a control room overlooking a massive surgical suite. At its center stood a sealed chamber surrounded by blinking monitors. "If we start the protocol before she destabilizes, we have a chance," he finally said. "But it's a narrow window." Emma pressed her palms against the glass, staring down at the empty chamber. This is real. I told you it was." She turned to him. "And they'll really try to stop you?" "They already have." He ran a hand through his hair, weariness briefly cracking through his focus. "Clinical trials. Funding threats. Lawsuits. They don't want a cure that bypasses them." Emma's stomach nodded. "But why?" "Because sick people pay more than healthy ones." A bitter silence fell between them. Then Carter's phone buzzed again. He checked the screen and froze. Emma watched his face harden. "What is it?" He answered the call, voice clipped. "Yes." A pause. His jaw clenched tighter. "When?" Another pause. "How long do we have?" Emma felt a cold dread seep into her bones. Carter ended the call and looked at her grimly. "We've been compromised." Emma's breath hitched. "What does that mean?" "It means someone leaked our location." He grabbed a tablet from the console, pulling up security feeds. They're already on the move. On the screen, camera footage showed black SUVs rolling past the outer gate. Emma's pulse skyrocketed. Who are they? Competitors? Legal teams? Maybe worse. Carter's voice was tense. People who want to shut down permanently. Emma's hands trembled. "What do we do?" He met her gaze, resolve burning behind his eyes. "We finish what we started." The intercom crackled to life. "Dr. Weston, patient inbound, ETA 7 minutes. Carter's expression steeled. "We're out of time." He turned to the team behind the glass. "Seal the lab. No one in or out without my clearance." A chorus of affirmations followed. Steel shutters groaned into place over the windows. Doors locked with magnetic seals. Alarms armed silently beneath the hum of machines. Emma stepped closer to him. "What if they break in?" "They won't." But the edge in his voice betrayed doubt. He handed her a lab badge. "If anything happens, if I tell you to run, take this, head to the East Wing, find Dr. Kim. He's the only one I trust." Emma's fingers closed around the badge. "You're scaring me." "Good," Carter said softly. "Stay scared enough to survive." Through the glass, she saw a stretcher being wheeled into the chamber, her mother pale and fragile beneath the cascade of wires and IVs. Emma pressed her hand to the glass, tears burning her eyes. "Mom." "We start now," Carter ordered his team. "Prep stage 1. Override clearance, bypass FDA lockouts." A technician hesitated. "Sir, if we bypass regulations, we're fully liable." "We're already liable," Carter snapped. "Do it." The monitors lit up in a flurry of data streams, vitals, genomic maps. Machines hissed to life, sterile lights flooding the chamber. Emma watched, equal parts hope and terror, as Carter moved swiftly between stations, barking instructions. Then, amid the flurry of activity, his phone buzzed again. He answered tersely. "Weston." Whatever he heard made him still completely. Emma's heart dropped. "What is it?" Carter ended the call slowly. "They've breached the gate." A beat of stunned silence. "We're not safe here." Emma felt her knees weaken. "What do we do?" He didn't hesitate. "We finish anyway." Alarms began to wail. Red lights strobed against the glass. Behind them, the doors shuddered under unseen blows. Emma's breath caught as Carter turned to her, urgency blazing in his eyes. "No matter what happens," he said fiercely, "don't stop believing she can make it." Outside, a loud metallic clang reverberated through the lab, the sound of a door beginning to buckle. And as Carter stepped back into the chaos, shouting orders, Emma realized the fight wasn't just for her mother's life anymore. It was for everything this cure could mean, everything they were willing to risk to make it real. The sirens screamed louder. Red strobes flashed across sterile walls as steel doors rattled under brute force. Emma pressed her back against the control panel, as wide as chaos erupted around her. "Move." Carter Weston's voice cut through the alarm, urgent and commanding. He grabbed a silver case from the containment unit, sealing it with trembling precision. "We're out of time." A technician shouted over the blaring speakers. They're breaking through Sector B. Carter swore under his breath. We can't hold them. He turned to Emma, shoving the case into her hands. This is the only copy. Guard it with your life. Emma clutched the case, heart hammering. What's in it? The serum. Everything. His gaze burned with intensity. Without this, it's over. A deafening crash echoed down the corridor. The doors buckled. Heavy boots pounded closer. Carter pulled Emma toward the back exit. Come on. They sprinted through dim corridors, shadows flickering as emergency lights failed one by one. Behind them, gunfire rang out sharp, terrifying. Emma stumbled as they burst through a service tunnel into the night air, gasping. Carter hit a remote. Headlights flared to life. A black SUV roared forward. Get in. She dove inside, clutching the case to her chest. Carter slid behind the wheel, slammed the door, and floored the accelerator. Tires screeched. Gravel spat behind them as the facility shrank in the rearview mirror. Behind them, figures swarmed out of the building, dark silhouettes against flashing lights. They're coming, Emma whispered, voice trembling. I know. Carter's hands tightened on the wheel. Hold on. The SUV hurtled onto the highway, engine roaring. Headlights appeared behind them. 3 black cars giving chase, gaining fast. Emma twisted in her seat. They're closing in. Carter's jaw clenched. Not for long. He veered onto a side road, tires skidding. The SUV lurched violently as they sped down a winding route, headlights weaving through dense forest. Emma gripped the handle, breath shallow. Why are they after us? Because that case, Carter said grimly, is worth billions. Her chest tightened. Billions. And not just in money. His voice dropped lower. In power. A sharp turn. Gravel sprayed. Behind them, one of the pursuing cars slid off the road, crashing into a ditch. 2 remained, engine snarling louder. Emma clutched the case tighter. They want to destroy it. They can't afford for it to exist. Carter's gaze flicked to the rearview mirror. A cure that works? It would collapse entire industries. Emma swallowed hard. That's why they tried to stop us at the lab. He nodded grimly. And they won't stop here. The road narrowed, twisting deeper into the night. One car surged alongside, trying to force them off. Carter swerved hard, clipping the other vehicle's fender. Sparks flew. Emma gasped as metal scraped metal. Carter, hold on. He jerked the wheel, sending their SUV fishtailing before regaining control. The pursuer spun out, skidding into a guardrail. Only one car remained. Carter's phone buzzed. He handed it to Emma without looking. Answer. Emma pressed it to her ear. Hello. A voice crackled through. Weston, they've hacked the lab system. They're wiping your research. Carter's knuckles whitened. Damn it. Emma's heart sank. They're erasing everything. Then that case, Carter said tightly, is the last proof it ever existed. Behind them, the final car accelerated, headlights blinding in the mirror. They're not backing down, Emma whispered. They won't. A narrow bridge loomed ahead. Carter accelerated. We make it across, we lose them. The bridge groaned under the SUV's weight as they thundered over. Behind them, the chasing car pushed harder until a tire caught the crumbling edge. Emma watched, breath held, as the pursuing car skidded sideways, then toppled over the railing, crashing into the river below. Silence returned, broken only by Emma's ragged breathing. Carter eased off the gas. For now, we're clear. Emma stared at the silver case resting in her lap. This could change everything, couldn't it? Carter's gaze softened briefly. It could save millions. She traced the cool metal with trembling fingers. But it could also get us killed, Carter finished quietly. The SUV sped deeper into the countryside, swallowed by darkness. Behind them, the world they'd left burned, both literally and figuratively. Ahead, the road stretched unknown. The narration whispered, haunting and resolute. They had the cure. They had hope. But hope, in the wrong hands, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The SUV screeched to a halt outside the hospital's emergency entrance, headlights blazing against rain-slicked pavement. Carter Weston jumped out first, swinging open Emma's door. Go, he urged. Take it to the ER. Emma clutched the silver case to her chest and ran. Her legs burned, lungs tight, but adrenaline pushed her forward. Bursting through the hospital doors, she rushed to the nearest nurse's station. Please, she gasped, slamming the case onto the counter. This is for my mother. You have to give it to her. The nurse stared at the sealed container, brows furrowing. What is this? Behind Emma, Carter strode in, flashing his credentials. Prepare the patient. Immediate administration. I'll oversee the process. Doctors gathered, skepticism shadowing their faces. One shook his head. There's no clearance for this drug. There's no time for clearance, Carter snapped. Her organs are failing. Emma's voice cracked. Pleased it's her only chance. Silence fell. A doctor exchanged a glance with Carter, then nodded reluctantly. Prep the room. Emma watched as her mother was wheeled away, tubes and wires trailing behind. She followed until a nurse gently stopped her at the observation window. You'll need to wait here. Inside, Carter stood over her mother's fragile body, directing the team with sharp precision. The silver case was opened, a vial extracted, the serum drawn carefully into a syringe. Emma pressed her palms against the glass, breath fogging the surface as she watched the needle slide into her mother's fore. A hush settled over the room. Machines hummed. Monitors beeped steady but weak. Now we wait, Carter murmured. Emma sank into a chair, numb. The minutes dragged like hours. The doctors whispered among themselves, stealing doubtful glances at the monitors. One tapped at a chart. Another frowned at the readings. Still, Carter stood silent, arms crossed, gaze fixed unwaveringly on the patient. Emma's throat tightened with every passing second. It's not working, she whispered. Carter didn't answer. An hour passed. Then two. Suddenly, a monitor blipped. A subtle shift in the rhythm. A number climbing, another stabilizing. A nurse leaned closer. Her vitals are improving. A doctor straightened. Look at the oxygen levels. Emma shot to her feet, hope flaring wildly. What's happening? Carter's lips pressed into a thin line, watching the data unfold. Her body's accepting it. Another beep. Then another. Stronger, steadier. The machines sang a growing chorus of life. Inside the room, Emma's mother stirred faintly beneath the sheets. A flutter of eyelids. Emma's breath caught. Her mother's eyes opened. Mom. Emma's voice broke into a sob. Mom. Through the glass, her mother's gaze searched the room. Confused, weak, but awake. Tears streamed down Emma's face. Relief crashed over her like a tidal wave, leaving her trembling, hollow, grateful beyond words. Doctors exchanged astonished looks. One shook his head, amazed. It worked. It's impossible, another murmured. No, Carter corrected softly. It's inevitable. Emma turned to him, overwhelmed. You did it, you saved her. But Carter was already stepping back, his expression unreadable, his eyes shadowed by something deeper. Before Emma could reach him, he slipped through the corridor, his steps purposeful yet distant. Wait, she called, but he didn't stop. At the end of the hall, he paused only briefly, leaving a card on the reception desk. Then he disappeared into the night, swallowed by the city's quiet darkness. Emma stood frozen, staring after him, heart aching with gratitude and questions. She approached the desk, picking up the card. Simple, elegant, only his name and a number. No company, no title, no trace of the man who'd risked everything for her mother's life. Behind her, the steady beep of the monitors played like a lullaby, the sound of a second chance. And as she looked back at her mother resting peacefully, a single thought echoed in her mind. Why would a man with everything risk it all for a stranger? The narration settled softly, like a haunting secret whispered from the shadows. Sometimes, the greatest kindness comes from those carrying the heaviest secrets. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Emma's bravery, Dr. Carter Weston's mysterious kindness, and the powerful moment when Emma's mother opened her eyes? Would you trust someone like Carter? What secrets do you think he's hiding? Tell us your theories below. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another suspenseful, emotional journey like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.